Greetings, members, one and all of the Salivation Nation. Gold broke records in 2020. Will silver do it in 2021? Let's explore. A very interesting and compelling story by Reuters about how gold really was the winner of the metals in 2020, although one could make the argument that palladium really is the one that has shown the brightest. But silver has done very well in 2020, all things considered. We're going to review this for kind of an interesting piece here. After a spectacular year, precious metals are set for further gains in 2021. With silver tipped to outperform, but analysts are growing more cautious about the prospects for gold as the global economy recovers from the impact of the coronavirus. And so it'll be very interesting to see how it plays out. You know, the pandemic triggered stockpiling by investors looking to protect their wealth. This, alongside supply deficits, pushed gold and palladium prices up by more than 20% this year, while silver rose 47% and platinum 10%. So by those numbers, it seems like that silver really shone the brightest, right? But in reality, it did not. The ratio between gold and silver was ever the wider, and that was really just on paper where those prices were reflected. Gold broke records in terms of its nominal price, but adjusted for inflation, it still has a little bit of ways to go to top its all-time high, which would really mean it would have to be over $2,200 an ounce. We are going to see new record highs for gold and palladium in 2021, said Philip Newman at Consultants Metals Focus. But silver will see the chunkiest gains, he predicts. And this is silver as it outperforms other metals in 2021. We can see here palladium, gold, silver, and platinum in terms of the percentage increase there. And you remember what happened in March, how far these metals fell from where they were. And look what silver did. Silver was very, very low. Platinum only went lower. But you think about it, platinum and palladium are very much industrialized metals. And you can see how sporadic the prices were, because right before the pandemic hit is when the palladium was up the highest. And by the way, at that time it was an epidemic, but there was some concerns as far as the performance of the economy and the coronavirus, but this thing really in March is when it really hit, and you can see these big dips during that time as far as the performance and the percentage increase in all of these dollar figures here. Very fascinating indeed. Traditionally seen as a safe place to store money, gold began to rise as economic growth slowed in 2019. But the pandemic accelerated the rally, and in August, prices hit a high of $2,072.50. That's the peak that gold hit. Pretty amazing that it really was not that far off from $2,100. While demand for physical gold was hammered as the virus forced shutdowns, investment demand surged, as reflected in the holdings of the world's largest gold-backed exchange-traded fund, SPDR Gold Trust, which recorded its biggest yearly gain since 2009 at about 30%. And so, yes, holdings in the world's largest gold-backed ETF surged there along these gold prices in 2020. These gold holdings. Prices then dipped to around $1,900 as investors stopped buying and vaccines were deployed against the virus. But really this happened before the vaccines were deployed, but there was encouraging news leading up to them that they would be released before the end of the year, and they were. And now they're being distributed at a record pace. And encouraging investment in assets that perform well during periods of economic growth. Huge government debt, negative real returns on bonds, and threats of inflation and market turbulence, all of which support gold, will persist in 2021, said Ross Norman, an independent analyst. Gold could rise another 20% next year, he said. And you can see U.S. real yields versus gold price, and we can see the inversion of them happened there back in June, and yield in the 10-year Treasury inflation-protected security is moving down to now it's -1, and you can see the gold price is kind of subdued a bit back, but it's starting to kind of make inroads and back in the positive territory, and it looks like it's heading higher as we're heading into January, but it can still stay subdued for a while. A safe haven like gold, but also an industrial metal used in products including solar panels, silver climbed from $18 an ounce in January to almost $30 an ounce in August before slipping to around $25. And we remember here what happened in March, and we'll talk about that here momentarily. Analysts say its dual role and its greater volatility mean it could fare better than gold. Key word here being could. As economic growth picks up, and U.S. President-elect, notice I said select and not elect, Joe Biden's push into clean energy prompts more usage. And yes, indeed, that is where spot gold silver ratio has topped off a record high in March, and that is what we've seen. With everything going down, the volatility of silver is paramount to keep in consideration. Even though I am bullish for silver, as I mentioned in prior videos, into 2021. And so that ratio at an all-time high of 124, I've heard that it has peaked at about 126 to 1 on March 18th, and now we've seen it come back down to what is the new normal now of about 70, a little bit higher than 70, which in my view is still very high. Investors soaked up the surplus of platinum, which is also used in jewelry industry by automakers to reduce pollution, but they are unlikely to do so again, particularly as supply, which fell because of the novel coronavirus, bounces back, said StoneX analyst Ronna O'Connell. They will likely drag on prices, which at around $1,000 an ounce are only slightly higher than at the start of the year. And we'll talk about that momentarily too, because that's a frustrating thing. I'm bullish on platinum too, but really we're ending the year as we started it, and so it is interesting to see that really this outlook is saying that we may see it fall, and so we'll find out. We'll see what happens. The surplus of platinum. So I don't know. We'll see how it plays out. The auto industry uses 4/5 of palladium, which, like platinum, neutralizes engine emissions. Is used little for investment purposes. Years of undersupply drove prices to record highs of $2,875.50 an ounce in February. The market thought it might run out of the metal, said one trader. Yes, and that's kind of why it is up. And of course, they talk about retooling for engines and things like that to use platinum in instead. But in some areas, especially for gasoline, palladium is better, but platinum can be substituted. Is a price difference worth doing? And perhaps so, but we'll see. I think the coronavirus kind of has put that off, though. Most analysts expect shortfalls to continue in 2021 as the global economy revives and auto sales rebound. Well, they never really stopped. I know, at least anecdotally in my area, auto sales are through the roof. So this is the chart that I think tells the tape for everything, and this is something that I think tells, and very well done, by the way, in this source here, Refinitiv Data Stream, with these charts. Very easy to read and on spot. They give us a good look at these metals and how they performed over the year. If you're interested, if you don't mind, gently caress that like button. That'll help the algorithm and get the word out about this video as we end out the year 2020. But let's take a look at this. What can we see from these 4 different charts for gold, silver, platinum, and palladium? Well, look at March. Look what happened in March for all these metals. We saw the price tank in all these metals. Why is that? Because investors have fled to the safety of cash. And if we do see another panic, we're going to see the same thing happen again, which is why there's a potential for a deflationary period before an inflationary period, which means we could see gold drop dramatically, silver crash, platinum potentially crash like it did. I mean, that was really essentially a crash when it went from over 1,000 to under $600 an ounce. That was almost lost half its value. Certainly, almost the same thing for silver, from where it was going almost to $20. It got to 18, and then it went down to under 12. Gold, it dropped pretty dramatically, for sure, but it did. But it did not drop nearly as much because gold is more stable. It's treasured. It's held. It's valued. It has, for all intents and purposes, a single purpose as a store of value. It does have industrial uses, but not nearly as much as silver. But essentially, before the pandemic was realized as what it is and being called as such, before that panic, it was trading around $1,600 an ounce, and then it fell to just below $1,500. That's just over $100, about $100 spread, $150 drop, which in terms of percentage, it's not that much compared to platinum, for instance, and silver. Palladium took it pretty hard on the chin too, from $2,800 down to $1,600. Very big drop in palladium's price, but nonetheless, the volatility of silver is what we're looking at, because really you can't make a whole lot of comparisons between platinum, palladium, and gold and silver, because platinum and palladium are, for all intents and purposes, are industrial metals. Kind of like gold is mainly a store of value. It is a hedge against economic instability. People treasure it. Platinum and palladium are used. Silver is both treasured and used as a commodity. In fact, I would make the argument that over the last 5 years or so, and maybe even more than that, maybe the last 6, 7 years, silver has been increasingly seen more as a commodity than as a store of value because of its volatility, which is silver's kind of always been somewhat volatile because it's always had an industrial use. But I think there's just been enough movement where the market has seen it. And this is a psychological observation, folks, that silver has become this volatile metal. And we've seen it happen time and time again when the prices move up and when they move down. We are at the end of the year right now, and we're going to take a look at where the prices are for gold and silver, and we can see that everything is a little bit out of whack right now. Gold is up $2.90. Silver's down 31 cents, down well over a percentage point. Kind of doesn't make sense. Usually they move in tandem with each other, with silver being more dramatic and radical in its movement. This has moved the gold to silver ratio to exactly 72 to 1. So the predictability of silver is difficult to do. Although you have heard me talk, and I stand by my predictions that silver will do better in 2021. In fact, I believe it could surpass $30 an ounce. But there's going to be some rocky road ahead for silver as well. And it could go down. And I may be wrong on all of this. But I do believe, because of what has been talked about in this article, and also what I've discussed on the channel, and where we are heading as a nation, both culturally, both in terms of our government overreach, in terms of green technologies, in terms of government expenditures, that's going to bode well for gold in terms of the financial aspect, and it's going to bode well for silver in terms of the increased demand. Now, that increased demand will be met by supply, an increased supply. Will it meet the demand? My guess is probably so, but there may be some bottlenecks in production, both for industrial because of the of coronavirus and getting over it and the like, and what's going on there, and re-establishing protocols and procedures in place in order to get this silver to market to meet the demand. And I believe we're going to see increased premiums in 2021 for physical silver holdings, but we may see increased activity in the paper markets, and there is still some concern over the COMEX. I've seen some data and talked to some folks about it. There's a lot to digest and to really to give an opinion on it. I'm not sure that I'm qualified to do so, but there are some concerns there with some of the numbers and what's known as shadow trading and the like, and that could be a game changer. But we just don't know. There's been talk about that, those kind of accusations before. So I'm very pessimistic to try to take a deep dive into that without fully grasping the concept and all the numbers. But one thing is clear, is that we are heading for some volatile times ahead in this country. We're in higher debt than ever before, huge deficit spending, and the whole world is doing the same thing. And I think that's going to bode well for precious metals in the midterm and especially for the long term. And I want to talk about the long term, looking past 2022 even. That is something that as accumulators of wealth, and that's what we do when we hold gold and silver, we have to look at the horizon and not so much at the objects right in front of us. Those objects right in front of us can be very distracting, and they can in some ways blind us from seeing the horizon. The thing is keeping focused ahead and accumulating only what you are comfortable and understand. This is why we don't want to be too rash in our movements in terms of accumulation, both gold and silver. But if you're going to do so, I would still encourage folks to get more gold because gold is a more stable asset class, I believe, than silver if you're using it to hedge to protect yourselves. But although I'm not discouraging you from buying silver either, but when you buy silver, you have to understand the volatility that is on that road to the horizon ahead. And that volatility will continue. That is one thing I'm sure of and can predict with the utmost confidence, that silver will continue to be volatile in 2021. And if you're buying the physical, you have strikes against you. You have the premiums that you're paying, and you have the potential that when you go to sell it, that you won't recover those premiums. Most likely, although in this day and age, as we've seen in 2020, there are some products where you have been able to capture some of the premium back, but between the price movement, you're not going to come out ahead. But that's not what it's about anyway. It's all about preserving where you're at on your road to financial freedom. And financial freedom really means wealth preservation. And you do that with precious metals. That's why we accumulate them. I'm not against holding paper silver, and I'm not against holding paper gold. But if you are into those as safe havens against the stock market, as you continue to navigate that space, I believe it's incumbent upon us to have some physical. And the premiums are what you pay for the privilege to hold them. But I think it's the ultimate protector in case any kind of crash or scenario does occur. We saw that in a sense in March. In March, it was a good time to be holding some physical in March when the price dropped. But it's a good time to to have bought some of the paper at that time and sold it in September when it got to $28, $29, $30 an ounce, heading into September, from August. So just some things to consider as we look at the outlook, how silver could shine and outperform the other metals in 2021. We'll find out. But likely, I am also predicting that the gold to silver ratio will narrow on average in 2021. To me, that's probably the boldest prediction I could make. It is a pretty bold prediction considering where we've been. Considering this year and how crazy it's been and how much gold has gone up, silver really should have performed much better than it has. But I do believe it will tighten up somewhat. I don't want to give a number, but that would definitely mean it'd have to be below 70 in order to outperform last year. So there you have it. Post your thoughts in the comment section below. And I want to wish you all a very happy new year. And thank you so much for being here with me on this channel in 2020. It's been a great year in that regard as far as the metals markets and watching them. But it's also been a horrible year in terms of the pandemic, in terms of the economy. Some of you have lost your jobs. Some of you have been affected directly by the virus or indirectly. We've all been indirectly to some form or another. But I pray for anybody who's been affected by this virus and in this way, the negative. And I pray for a better 2021 in that regard. And also pray for our nation and the world in 2021 and our leaders and how they navigate the economy and social issues and everything. We want everything to be better in the end. That's really what it boils down to. And I pray for that in 2021. A multitude of gratitude to you all for taking the time to watch, and encourage you to please rate, share, comment, and subscribe.